Hey there, my name's Colette Gunim, and this is Rooted in Love, a podcast where we dive deep into conversations with spiritual and social justice servant leaders who are dedicated to cultivate a world truly rooted in love. Join us as we intertwine powerful insights and visionary ideas that inspire us to reimagine what it would look like to truly be in radical, loving community together. Thank you for joining us to expand your mind and open your heart towards our collective liberation. This is Rooted in Love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Rooted in Love, where we talk about the intersection of spirituality and social justice for our collective liberation. Today I'm here with a very special soul, Itzel Hayward, who I just was so inspired by when I first met, just by her level of presence and her level of depth and grounding and really doing the work to do so much healing in the world that is so desperately needed. So excited to go into depth and about your own journey, and here to learn from you and learn with you on this path of being able to heal within ourselves and for the collective as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk today.
Absolutely. Yes. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. It's wonderful. So I'd love to start our conversation off with the podcast title, which is called Rooted in Love, and being able to talk a little bit about what practice allows you to stay rooted in love, especially at a time where there's a lot of darkness and it seems to be an absence of love.
For me, I often come back to, what does love mean to me? You know, what does that mean on a daily basis? And for me, I try to bring a non-judgmental awareness to the people who are around me, to the experiences that are happening around me, so that I can be really, really present for them. And I see that kind of presence and that kind of attention as being love in action.
That's beautiful. Yeah, of like being able to be there for somebody fully. And before we go in deeper, I know that you do lead meditations and yoga, and wondering if there's any small practice that you'd be open to sharing with us and the viewers that are here to learn.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. I think, in any given moment when I notice that I'm feeling disconnected or, discombobulated or just not present, a practice I often do is just to come back to my breath. So we can do that together.
That sounds
All
great.
Right. So I'm going to put both of my feet on the floor. That's how I feel most grounded and present. But I definitely invite everyone to just make the body as comfortable as you can. And some days the body is more comfortable than others. So just being with whatever is here in this moment. If you'd like, if it's comfortable, you can allow the eyes to gently close. Or if you prefer, you can lower the eyes and soften the gaze. And simply bring the awareness to the breath. The breath doesn't need to be changed or altered in any way. Just be aware. When are you breathing in? When are you breathing out? If it's helpful, I invite you to take a moment to notice where you feel the breath most distinctly. So it may be in the rising and falling of the chest or of the abdomen. It may be the movement of the air in the nostrils, slightly cooler on the inhale, slightly warmer on the exhale. Maybe it's the gentle sound of the breath. Wherever it is you're most aware of the breath, allow the attention to rest there. For each inhalation and each exhalation. And taking a moment to perhaps set an intention to come back to the breath at different moments throughout the day. just to simply notice, I am here. This is the in-breath. This is the out-breath. And I like to close my practice, and each practice that I do, with a silent wish. And we'll close this practice together in this way today. If you'd like, you can bring the palms of the hands together in front of the heart. And together we'll send out a silent wish that the entire universe and all beings everywhere know peace, peace, and only peace. And as you're ready, you can release the hands to the knees or to the lap and gently lift or open the eyes.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Wow. I felt that wave of peace go over my eyes. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Very beautiful practice. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's so supportive for me too to just simply come back to the breath.
Yes.
To remember that I'm here, right? Our mind so often wants to take us into the future, take us into the past, and to just be present with what's here in this moment. This is where we begin, right? This is where we do the work.
Wow. Wow. And it can feel so hard to do that sometimes because of the chaos of the world.
Yes.
How, colonization has made us just go at full throttle speed all the time. So there's actually another way of living and being.
Yeah.
And so you giving the permission to do that. It's really inspiring.
I do believe that colonization, capitalism, all that is by design to keep us so busy, so worried, so distracted. So we really have to be very intentional about bringing a practice into our own lives so that we continue coming back to this moment, coming back to the people in front of us and around us. How can we support? How can we be of service? And we can only do that if we're here, if we're present with that.
Well, I'd love to backtrack. I'd love to go deeper into your own journey now, if you're open to sharing a bit about your own path towards the space of healing, yoga, meditation. And I was reading a bit about your own background, that you were in the legal space and that you were really into pursuing law, and wondering what made you interested in that, and then what caused that shift for you to go into the well-being space as well.
Yeah, I practiced law for a lot of years. I was a lawyer for about 13 years in San Francisco. Wow. I loved the work that I was doing. I worked in a couple of different places, but I did work supporting low-income communities of color in California, in regulatory spaces. I helped to prosecute unethical attorneys, particularly those who were targeting limited English speakers. I was doing a lot of really great work, powerful work, and I was very, very proud of the work I was doing, the organizations I was working in, and the people who I was working with. And I reached a point in that work where I really felt like there was something fundamentally that I wanted to challenge about the justice system. And I was looking at how we're managing conflicts in ways that are very deeply disconnected and very much based on this paradigm where there is a victim and then there is a villain. And I just started seeing that there was a different way, right? I believed that there was a way that we could still achieve what I thought were the goals of justice, which is a functioning society where folks are cared for, and when harm occurs, it's addressed in some way. But I really started to see that there were other ways that we could address the harm that weren't punitive, that weren't pushing people out of the circle or of the community, but actually bringing people back in, restoring the harm that occurred, and then also looking at the conditions that existed in the first place that led to this person engaging in this activity that caused harm, right? And so I just took a big step back. I wanted to just get a bigger picture look at what justice meant to me, what community meant to me, and how we hold harm when it occurs in community, and what was my role going to be in that. So that was the entry point. That was the entry point. And then from there, I really started looking at systems around restorative justice, transformative justice. I began studying nonviolent communication. And at the same time that this is all happening, I'm coming out of a high stress career, profession, and I had taken yoga before, but then I really dove into my practice very, very deeply and started understanding that there's this whole philosophy underlying it, right? It wasn't just these postures that made me feel great and relaxed and wonderful and open. And, I loved the practice, but then understanding that there's a whole philosophy underneath it that's actually guiding the practice, which is why I would feel so great and present and open afterwards. And so I just started kind of bringing everything together, all those parts together, just this idea of community and interdependence and how we care for ourselves and how we care for each other. And that's how I ended up here where I am today.
Wow. It takes a lot of courage to make that leap over to the other. It seems like the other side of what it should be, intertwined for sure. And I'm wondering, are you still intertwining those two worlds, or have you left the legal world behind? Where are you at now?
No, it's very much still intertwined. I'm actually teaching a law school class right now, working with law students, specifically teaching tools around facilitation, which is how do groups work together to move a project, move a goal forward together. And so much of that is about, if you're the person guiding that group toward that destination, so much of that is about how do you hold conflict in a way that keeps the group together and not ruptured? How do you stay present when things arise with yourself so that you can be present for the group?
What was that spark or that catalyst to say, okay, I want to dive deeper into yoga? Was at that time in your life, was there something happening where you're like, okay, I need to make this shift? Or was it just a curiosity, intrigue?
Yeah, no, there were a lot of shifts happening in my life. And I very much had a maybe an unconscious belief, or not fully conscious belief, that, if you're a good person, bad things won't happen to you. There was kind of this, and it wasn't exactly that. It wasn't like I'd had this perfect life and no bad things had ever happened to me, but I just kind of felt like, I'm a grown up and I'm a lawyer, and now I'm just going to keep doing all the right things and everything will work out. And life had different plans. And, so at this time that I'm shifting out of my profession, all these other areas of my life, my personal life, my professional life, of course, the well-being of family members around me, all these things started shifting. And I just had so many just major losses that all just came all at once. And I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with that. I felt so lost and so confused. And I started going to these yoga classes, and I would feel better in the classes, which was great. And then I thought, well, let me see what this is about. And I started reading some books, and I was like, okay, there's something here that is like, in the midst of all this loss, there's something here within me that is steady and peaceful and quiet. And how is that? And why is that? And what is that? So that really inspired a deeper look, a deeper dive.
I feel like it's always having to go through that rock bottom, that deep suffering, that it's like, okay, I need to surrender to something, some practice or something that will allow me to have an anchor point.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering for you, like on your own spiritual journey, did you grow up with any kind of faith? And also, I know I was reading that you also lived in the ashram for some time too, and so also a very bold step to go into fully in that experience. And so, yeah, maybe a bit about your faith and spiritual journey.
I grew up in a Christian household. My parents grew up with in different Christian religions from each other. And so I always had the sense that they were very open-minded about, religion. And, I felt like what really was important to them as I was growing up was that I, for lack of a better word, just like be a good person. You know what I mean? There weren't like really, tenets that I needed to abide by, but just like, be a good person in this world, make a positive impact in this world. And, my parents were tremendous role models to me in that respect. Very big-hearted, generous people, worked very, very hard to give me, the opportunities that I was able to have. They're both immigrants, immigrated to the United States, and I can't even imagine truly just the courage, to do that. I think about myself. They're both from Panama, Central America.
Wow.
Yeah, so just the courage to just leave everything come to a brand new country. They did everything for me, from just the support and the love, but also the modeling. And so when I left home, I had that kind of foundation. And I didn't have like a faith home per se. I didn't have a particular church that, I attended regularly, but I always stayed in, I speak very regularly with my parents, and that's part of the conversation. Just like, what is your life looking like? What are you doing for the world? What are you doing for your community? And so that, that was always a part of my upbringing and just the way I moved through the world. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then I found yoga. I decided I'm going to just dive really deep into this. I loved the philosophy so much. It made a lot of sense to me, and I loved the perspective of this is a science, yoga as science. So you do it, you experiment, and if it works, well, now there's not like, believe me, I'll tell you what to do. It's like, no, you practice, and then you believe yourself, you believe the experience that you have, you believe the impact you have on the world, on your relationships. And I was moved by that, and the philosophy seemed very sound to me. And so I decided to do the yoga teacher training, and I think maybe halfway through the training, I was like, this is it. This is it.
This is the real deal.
This is it. Yeah. And I moved in, I think a month later or something. I moved into the ashram about a month later. Wow. And just, deep dive.
So amazing. Which practice of yoga or which branch called you?
Yeah. I got trained in the integral yoga tradition, which is the ashram in which I lived. And, it was definitely, living in an ashram is almost just like amplifies everything, right? Like you think you're like moving into this, like I'm gonna just be at peace all the time. And it just like amplifies, like you hear your thoughts, you become so attuned to what's happening around you and what's, things touch you. So, you're so sensitive. It was like, you're kind of like this raw, exposed nerve. And so it was very, very powerful experience. There's nothing really like it. And then I moved out. I lived there for 3 years. I'm pretty sure. I have to do. I know. I think about that. I'm like, is that right? Yeah, I lived there for 3 years.
How long ago was this? Also,
that was 20. I want to say, oh my gosh, like 2010 to 2013. I think that's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And yeah, and then since then, you know, there have been a lot of things that have come up at the Integral Yoga Institute, which was very painful for a lot of folks in the community. You know, it was a lot of people came to learn that the founder of Integral Yoga had inappropriate relationships with his students, which is a story that we just keep hearing over and over again. And it really shook up the community a lot. And, you know, we definitely practiced our yoga through it. But you know, the harm of both what happened and also how some members of leadership managed that discovery for some and that disruption has just had so many ripple effects. So it's been really hard to see that.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because I feel like this is something that really happens in all spiritual paths and everything, and people who go through religious trauma or have that experience that they're just like, well, this is all not, obviously this is not real or it's not working because this person who's supposed to be the leader is not embodying these principles. And so then they just completely shut it off. And I'm wondering for you that you kept going on the path even with all of this. And I guess what was your viewpoint on everything that was happening?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was always so clear from the moment I was introduced to yoga that these teachings are timeless and that the teacher is the teacher, and thank you for being the vessel to provide me with the teachings, but it's not about the teacher. And so I myself as a teacher do my best to impart that to my students as well. Like I'm just the delivery person. I'm just the messenger, you know, like it's not me, you know? And so I just have always been able to so deeply connect with the teachings that a teacher no longer being my teacher, certainly there's pain and loss there, but that does not change that the teachings are the true teacher.
Wow, yeah, that's a much more like, profound and zoomed out way to look at it, that it's like, okay, you don't have to see it for the person, it's for the actual philosophy that's coming through.
Yeah.
It's very powerful.
And it's so interesting because I've never talked about my history growing up with religion, but I mean, I think that's just like a very clear through line. Like, it's not this dogma, it's not this person, right? It's like, what is true for you? That allows you to be present, be open-hearted, be connecting, be supportive, serve where you can. You know, all these principles are so timeless. And I never had that firmly tied to any one thing. So for me, it was like yoga was like another, I mean, I'm realizing that in this moment, as I've never thought about this before.
Wow. Oh, wonderful.
So, I mean, that maybe made it easier for me.
Okay. I'm also wondering, like, your idea of higher power, source, like if you're open to sharing, like what is your own belief of if there is a creator or God?
I feel like I have different answers every day. Yes. Oh my goodness. But at this point, what most calls me is this idea that there is life. And each one of us is just an expression of that life, of the same life, right? And if I can honor that life energy, and if I can see everything and anyone as that life energy, that divine energy, that creator energy, I think the name can get tricky, right? Putting a name on it, I know for me anyway, it really hung me up for a very long time because I learned certain things that were associated with certain names, and I'm like, I don't like that. So now I don't like that word, right? But if I can just get all the way down to that place where I genuinely believe we're all connected and honor that and see the divinity in that, that's what supports me. That's the foundation.
It's beautiful.
What I'm doing.
I'm wondering, like, do you believe that there is a being? Like, do you think it's a being or like an energy or, I guess like in your own faith path, like, can you have a relationship with that life energy, or is it's just the thing that connects us all, a force field?
No, I love that. I mean, one thing that I did take away from yoga that I absolutely adore is that because we're all expressions of this beautiful life energy, we can select anything to represent that for us, you know? So it can be a person, right? Or it can be a being. It can be a flower. It can be nature. It can be love. Like we have the opportunity to kind of tap into that energy anywhere.
Wow.
So.
That's beautiful. Yeah, because it's like, I mean, if we do say God, then they say like, God is everything. So like, okay, then
Right, then everything is God. Right, if God is everything, then everything is God.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, very beautiful. Thank you so much for going deeper in that. Very beautiful. Okay, I'd love to pivot a little bit now into the social justice space and talking a bit about, how your own spiritual journey, how it has impacted how you show up in the world in that, service, ending oppression.
Yeah.
How do they go together or not?
I've always been an activist, and I like to say, I used to be out there shouting in the protest. I still am. I think that there's a place for that, and I think that there's a message that we're sending when we do that, right? When we have our voices heard. So the through line is very consistent for me. I feel like I do believe it's important to speak out when witnessing injustice. What my practice is to come back again and again to the humanity of that person on the other side. And that does not mean that I excuse the behavior or that what troubles me the most that I see sometimes in spiritual communities is this idea that, so if everything is divine, why do anything? Right? Why do anything at all? Why help? Why stop? Why would it even cross my mind that thing is wrong? Right? If everything is perfect and everything is divine. And so for me, everyone's on their own journey on this, of course. But for me, what I really see is this idea that, like, the vision I have for the world is that we all witness that divinity in all of us. Right? That is the vision, right? And so if I see someone harming another person, I can recognize that they are a person, they are divine, but they're not recognizing the divinity in other people. They are creating a harm. And so for me to not intercede, for me to not do anything at all is actually perpetuating that harm, right? Where I can, of course, right? I'm seeing harm every day, all the time on the news, right? And I can't do everything every day, but where I can, to not intercede is perpetuating that harm, right? And so I think it's really important to take action, right? To take action when we see harm happening, to support, to protect. I'm a big believer in protective use of force. Like I'm not going to try to force people to do something. I'm not going to, use my power to force people to act a certain way or do a certain thing. But if I can use my force to protect, I will. I think that's where the distinction lies, right? If I'm using force to power, to coerce, to manipulate, to create fear, I don't see the benefit to that. That's creating more harm. But using force to protect, I think is really valuable, and it supports this vision of a place where people's divinity is honored.
I think a lot of people are in so much rage and so much anger, rightfully so, for the harm of the divine nature of people, and just very, very hard. And so something that I am struggling with, and I'm wondering if you may think about this too, is around reactionary anger and reactionary protection of harm in that versus intentionally responding. And I guess in the idea of justice through fighting back, through nonviolence versus violence, and where you are and where you stand on that.
I think that when we come to a problem of violence with violence or with aggression, we're just bringing more violence and aggression into the world. And so when I even talk about protective use of force, I'm talking about the minimum amount of force that I need to stop the harm, right? So a very classic example that I often talk about in my class is if you're with a child and the child runs into the street, right? I like a relationship with all beings, including children, that's power with, not power over. So I'm not going to make a child do something. But if I see a child's going to run into the street, I will make them stop. I will physically hold them, right? Not to punish, right? But to protect. And so I'm going to just do the bare minimum I need to do. I don't need to shout at them. I don't need to, or maybe they're too far to grab. I do shout. Whatever the minimum I need to protect, I'll bring that. And so I do believe in nonviolent movements and the protective use of force in a way that is absolutely the minimum needed to stop the harm that's happening.
I guess it's the next follow-up is when somebody is at that level of rage, the injustice just like in our face.
Yeah.
When somebody has that level of heightened emotion, how can they come from a place of, okay, how can I do bare minimum?
Right.
When their nervous system is so shot and dysregulated and...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are two things I want to say. I do think that these practices, right, for presencing ourselves, I think that they give us a little bit more capacity, which I think is beautiful, to have a nervous system has a little more capacity, a little more resilience. And there are some things that our nervous system is not going to normalize to, right? And I don't think should, right? And so I think it's so important to have these practices so that we can come back. We can recognize when we're in that space and come back to ourselves so that we can be more intentional, right? And come from a higher, like, cognitive function. Like, I talk about this a lot, that our cognitive function, our higher cognitive function shuts off, you know? And so we are going to make the best difference when we can connect back into that, or the wisest choices. And I think probably the best choices for whatever our goal is, when we could tap into that. So having a regular practice is so important. And then kind of to zoom back, the second part of what I want to say, to zoom back, a lot of what we're seeing now isn't individual harm, but systemic harm, you know? And so that's a whole different thing. That is not just like me putting my body between someone who's harming another, or me grabbing a child from running into a street. That's about changing systems around us that are harming people. And that takes collective action. No one of us can do that alone.
What does that collective action look like for you, or what you feel would be most beneficial for that shift in system?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, when I'm in that state of just like overwhelm, I come back to community, like my immediate community. How can I get support in my community? How can I bring support into my community? How can we build more resilient communities together, right? Like immediate, right? Like my home, my neighbor, my neighborhood, my city. You know, that's where I come back to when I feel like, oh my gosh, I can't dismantle ICE by myself. You know what I mean? Like, whew. So that is where I channel my energies. Like, I come back to healing communities. What do my neighbors need? What do the people in my community need? What communities are being targeted in my city? What do they need, right? So to me, that helps me so much, because I feel like I can make such a bigger impact. And then I absolutely love what people are doing across the country. I think it's so important for people to find organizations that they trust, that they can support, people who they can follow, who can, filter the news so that they're receiving what's most important to them and what they feel most empowered to take action toward, and take care of themselves, right? And those are ways we can take care of ourselves and stay in action. I think that's so important.
Something I hear a lot from people is, like, especially in the organizing space or activism space, is that there's not enough time to, like, these practices of healing, wellness, like, there's just so much that is needed to be done on the ground that this is not the priority. Mm-hmm. And wondering if you have anything you would say to those people that are really focusing on the direct action work versus this more subtle
right
work.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's. I don't mean to be flip with this quote, but it's a quote that I love that makes me kind of chuckle and makes me think. But there's a teacher, I wish I could remember the name of the teacher, who said, you should meditate for 30 minutes every day. And if you don't have time to meditate for 30 minutes, you should meditate for an hour. Right? So,
That's awesome.
So I know, I love that quote. I love that quote.
Good.
Right? And so, like, that's how foundational this work is, right? We need to be able to come back to ourselves, or we can't do that great work out into the world. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it's okay for me to share a reflection that I feel like you embody that peace, you know? And it's like, how is there going to be peace in the world if we haven't embodied it within ourselves?
Yeah.
And that, like, just being around you is already healing, you know? And that, like, it's because you've done the work and that you have the regular practices that allow you to show up in that way. That, it's almost impossible to harm at that point once you're no longer harming within yourself.
Yeah.
Too. So thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Beautiful.
for being that reflection in the world.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. My next question is about integrity. And I think a lot of people really do want to do the things of meditating and having these practices, yoga, self-care, and yet life takes over, other priorities take over, and then they begin to lose the integrity within themselves, not doing the things that they said they were going to do for themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have any suggestions around that, of like having inner integrity when we need it most.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think about, if I'm thinking about creating a more peaceful interior, or a more peaceful world, whatever it may be, if I am violent to myself about missing my practice, right, that is violence too, So how can I hold myself with self-compassion? And I kind of want to expand this much bigger, but let's start with this. Like, how do I hold myself with compassion, right? Like, I missed my practice, and then I missed my practice again, and then I missed my practice again, and then I missed my practice again, right? Like, how can I hold myself with compassion? And then just remember, I can always begin again. I can always begin again. And for me, like, to kind of to zoom that out on a bigger level, I think about kind of cancel culture that I think is, it's very similar to what I'm talking about, the divisive kind of sense of justice, like the pushing out. Like, how can we bring that person who's made this mistake into the fold? How can we show them compassion? How can we help heal any harm that's been created or caused by their actions? And how can we look at the system that existed to create, have them choose the choices they made, right? So it's like almost like, I don't want to internally cancel myself either.
Wow.
Right?
How can people do that? Like, what kind of practice would allow them to no longer have that self-sabotage?
Yeah,
behavior?
I mean, that is my lifetime work for sure. But I do have an intentional self-compassion practice, a self-empathy practice, where I check in with myself. How am I feeling in this moment? What am I needing? If I've done something that I'm really disappointed, right? That it maybe did cause harm, right? Like, what was it in me that led to that action, right? What was that about? And can I hold that part of myself with compassion and go, look, I know you were doing the best. Like, first, to start with that, you were doing the best you knew how in the moment. And it hurts now. You look at the impact and it hurts.
Wow.
And give that part of me some space.
Wow.
And then kind of the higher mind can lock in and go, okay, you got the care you needed. Now it's time for me to step in and fix this harm and maybe set up systems so I don't do this again. Right? But if I can give that part of myself that empathy and what it does need, right? If I'm lashing out at somebody, there's some part of me that's hurt, right? So like, how can I take care of that part of me without hurting other people? And then how do I repair what's happened and set up systems so I don't do it again?
Wow. I'm wondering if this is also showing up because you're a mom too, like with your child, that now that you're doing that for your own, inner child,
yes.
like self-compassion. Like,
yeah.
I'm sure that's another huge opportunity test to do that work.
Yes, I joke, not joke, that my child is my guru. Oh my goodness. All the teachings, all the buttons, like, okay, how about this button? I'm like, okay, that's a new button. Didn't know I had that button.
Wow, trigger point, got it. Yes.
Yeah, it's all learning, learning. I mean, I also see it as just a tremendous honor to, shepherd this person through life. So, staying tapped into that honor, staying tapped into this is a different person. I think that's what's hardest with children, actually. Like, this is not another part of you,
wow.
Or like not an extension of you. In some way, of course it is, but it's also a unique human being on their own journey that I would love to just like wrap in bubble wrap for the rest of his life and never be hurt. But, there are going to be things that he does that he needs to learn that will trigger me, that will all the things. And how can I just make space for all of that? From a very early age, my child, and I think most children, have like this need for autonomy that floats up very early. They talk about the 2s and the 3s and how challenging that could be. That's just them expressing their autonomy. And as they get older, that need continues, and they just get bigger, and they have more words to express it, and they have more ideas of how to, work with you so that they can have that need met. So it's a lot of, that's just such a big part of it. Is like, how do I honor his need for autonomy and also do what I think I need to do as a parent to prepare him to go out into the world in a way that I hope keeps him, safe and healthy and happy, and also contributes to the larger community and world that he's stepping into. Yeah, I feel like if there's nothing else that I taught parents, it would be just the power of repair. Because not only does that help you and help your child and help that relationship, but it also models to the child how to treat themselves, how to treat other people, how to move through the world, just the power of repair.
Gosh.
It's always a possibility.
God. I'd love to zoom it out now to community work and the services that you offer in the community, and attuned living. It's attuned living, right?
Yeah.
It's attuned living, and that creation of a new entity for those, and what you're doing in.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I very much love to do, and it's how we initially connected, was working at the Healing Well. And I know you have another episode with the executive director, Kathy Curran of the Healing Well, and they're doing such amazing work. So that's just a big part of the work that I love to do, supporting that community. That's in San Francisco, also in the Bay Area. I'm in the East Bay, however. And then Attuned Living, that's my own business. I'm working with folks one-on-one. And I'm also on Insight Timer, which is a big piece of what I'm doing as well, and offering live events and meditations. I hope to start teaching physical yoga practices on there as well, just so I can reach more people. Yes. Reach more people. So that's what I'm looking at right now, and it's just been beautiful.
Wow, so exciting.
Yeah.
And what do you feel like is like your ultimate vision, or like what you would want to bring to the world? What's your, I guess, soul purpose dharma that is in you?
Yeah, definitely still working that out.
Yes,
and I think being a parent really shifts all the perspectives, But for me, I would love to bring a different vision for what justice can look like and what our justice systems can look like. I think when I think about that, I mostly think in this country. And, for me, I think it's going to take more than just kind of stepping in and making solutions on the surface. I think it's going to be something that needs to go a lot deeper and look more systemically. It's a big thing. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but for me, that is something that feels so important to me. And I just feel so, like every part of me kind of lights up, like the lawyer part of me, the, compassionate communication, the yoga. I feel like it's all pointing to that.
Wow. Yes, you're on the path. You're always on the path. Beautiful. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything else that you feel like is important to share with people and their own healing journey, or whatever other takeaways you want folks to have?
Wow. I mean, I think, and we talked about it from the meditation all the way to the end about repair, that we can always begin again. Begin again. I think if there was any one thing I would want to leave folks with, is you can always begin again. Begin again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you.
Yes, and just want to make sure, how can people follow your work? How can
they can
join in?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find me at attunedliving.com. That's my website, and also I'm on Insight Timer as Itzel Hayward, so they can find me there as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You.
It was really such a beautiful conversation. Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening. And we'll be sure to put everything in the show notes of all the links so people can be in touch and stay contacted. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Rooted in Love, featuring Itzel Hayward, a true embodiment of peace who is rippling healing support to so many through the power of yoga and meditation. If If you'd like to learn more about Itzel's offerings in the community, you can find a list of useful links in the show notes. Please feel free to share this episode with a friend, subscribe, and leave a rating. Follow along for future episodes on Instagram at Coco Sanctuary, which is also in the show notes. Until next time, please be sure to take intentional moments of pause to be able to stay rooted in love within yourselves and for the community around you.